She called just after midnight, the hour when fear speaks the loudest and truth slips out before you can stop it. Jean Carmen had been brushing her hair, preparing for bed. When the phone rang with a jarring urgency, she recognized instantly. Marilyn never called this late unless something was wrong. Marilyn. Jean answered, sitting straight up. There was a pause on the other end. A breath. A trembling inhale. Jean, are you awake? Her voice was small, thinned by exhaustion, stretched tight over something darker. I'm here, Jean said quickly. What happened? Silence again, not empty silence, but the kind that holds back tears. They're watching me, Marilyn whispered. Jean froze. Who? I don't know, but I feel it. I feel it in my bones. Every time I close the curtains, I swear I see shadows move. Jean's heartbeat slammed against her ribs. Marilyn had said similar things before, hints, anxieties, suspicions. But this time something in her voice was different. Not dramatic, not performative. Frightened. Baby, you're exhausted, Jean said softly. You need sleep. No, Marilyn breathed. You're not listening. Something is wrong. I can feel it. And I don't think I'm supposed to talk about it. Her voice cracked at the end, like a child trying not to cry. Jean stood up, already grabbing her keys. I'm coming over. No, Marilyn said sharply. No, don't. If someone is watching, I don't want you here. I don't want you involved. Marilyn. Please, she whispered. I don't want anyone else getting hurt because of me. That sentence chilled Jean to her core. What happened today? She pressed. Tell me what's going on. A shaky exhale. Papers rustling. A door closing. Then, in a voice barely audible, I told the wrong person the truth. Jean's stomach dropped. About what? Another pause. Longer. Heavier. About who I've been seeing, Marilyn whispered. About things I shouldn't know. Things I shouldn't have said. I messed up, Jean. I really messed up. Fear pulsed in Jean's throat. Marilyn, listen to me. You're overwhelmed. You're imagining. No, I'm not. Marilyn snapped. Then her voice broke again. I'm not imagining it this time. She sounded so sure. So terrified. Jean pressed the phone harder to her ear, as if closeness could protect her friend. Where is your doctor? Jean asked. Where's Ralph? I don't want to call him, Marilyn whispered. I don't trust anyone right now. Do you trust me? There was a small, agonizing pause. You're the only one I trust. And those 6 words, would echo in Jean's mind for the rest of her life. Marilyn grew quieter, turning inward, retreating into some private terror she couldn't name aloud. Jean tried to coax her into clarity. Baby, breathe. Tell me exactly what happened. I don't remember all of it, she said. There were so many people around today. So many calls. So many doors opening and closing. Someone came by tonight, but wouldn't tell me why. Jean felt her knees weaken. Someone came to your house. Yes. Who? I don't know, Marilyn whispered. But they didn't knock. They just appeared. Her breath shook. Jean could hear it vibrating against the phone. I think they were in the hallway, Marilyn said. I could hear footsteps. Slow ones. Waiting ones. Why didn't you call the police? A bitter laugh. Hollywood police? They listened to them, not to me. She had a point, a terrifyingly valid one. Marilyn, Jean said firmly, you can't stay alone tonight. Let me come get you. No, she whispered again. I don't want you here. You don't understand. If something happens to me, it needs to happen only to me. The resignation in her voice made Jean's entire body go cold. Nothing is going to happen to you, she said fiercely. Nothing. Marilyn exhaled shakily. I'm so tired, Jean. More than I've ever been. I don't feel like myself anymore. You just need rest. No, Marilyn whispered. It's not that kind of tired. And Jean understood. She didn't mean exhaustion of the body. She meant exhaustion of the soul. Minutes passed with neither of them speaking. Jean listened to the sound of Marilyn's breathing, as fragile as wind slipping through a cracked window. Then Marilyn's voice returned, softer, defeated. Do you ever feel like your whole life has been written by someone else? She asked. Jean swallowed hard. Sometimes. That's how I feel right now, Marilyn murmured. Like I'm standing inside a script I didn't write. And the ending is already decided. Stop, Jean said quickly. Don't talk like that. Another long silence. Then Marilyn whispered something Jean would replay until her dying breath. A sentence so quiet, so aching, so stripped of hope that it still haunts the walls of Hollywood. Asterisk, I don't think I'm going to make it out of this. Asterisk. Jean's heart nearly stopped. Don't you dare say that, she said, trying not to cry. It's just a feeling, Marilyn said softly. A very strong feeling. Then fight it, Jean urged. Fight it, baby, please. I'm tired of fighting. No. Listen to me. Stay awake. Stay with me on the phone. I can't stay awake, Marilyn whispered. Everything feels heavy, like someone is pushing me underwater. Her words blurred. Faded. Marilyn. Jean called desperately. Marilyn, don't hang up. Marilyn, baby, talk to me. A faint sound came through, not her voice. Something else. A door. Closing. Then nothing. The line went dead. Jean called back again and again. No answer. She threw on a coat, grabbed her purse, and ran to her car. She drove through red lights, through empty streets, through the sharp panic clawing her throat. When she reached Marilyn's house, the lights were still on. But Marilyn didn't answer the door. And Jean would never forget the dread that washed over her as she banged on the windows, screaming her best friend's name into the night. Years later, Jean would repeat the same words in every interview, every documentary, every late-night recollection of the woman she loved like a sister. She told me she didn't think she'd make it out of it. And I didn't listen. I didn't understand. I didn't know she was saying goodbye. What Marilyn said still haunts Hollywood. Not because it was dramatic. Not because it was mysterious. Not because it hinted at secrets no one dared investigate. But because it was the truth, spoken softly, directly, desperately, in the final hours of a woman the world thought was invincible. And no one heard her in time. Jean stood on Marilyn's porch long after her fists stopped hurting from pounding on the door. She pressed her forehead against the wood, begging for any sound, footsteps, a cough, a whisper, anything that meant Marilyn was still awake, still moving, still reachable. But the house stayed silent. Too silent. A silence so unnatural it seemed to press against the windows from the inside. She circled to the back of the property, calling Marilyn's name over and over into the night air. No response. At one point she swore she saw a curtain shift, but when she ran to it, the room behind the glass was still. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. She tried the police again. You don't understand, she told the operator. My friend is in danger. I heard her on the phone. She's not safe. The operator promised to send someone. Jean didn't wait. She ran back to her car and leaned against the steering wheel, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. Fear sat in her chest like a stone. She replayed Marilyn's final words again and again. Asterisk, I don't think I'm going to make it out of this. Asterisk, asterisk, everything feels heavy. Asterisk, asterisk, someone is pushing me underwater. Asterisk. It didn't sound like a woman who was despairing. It sounded like a woman who was fading, not willingly, but as if something was pulling her away. Jean stayed until the patrol car arrived. Even then, she refused to leave. She answered questions mechanically, her voice shaking, her hands icy cold. When the officers knocked, she held her breath. When they rang the bell, she held it longer. When they went around the back, flashlights sweeping the dark corners, she whispered, Please, please be okay, baby. But the officers eventually returned with stiff expressions. No signs of forced entry, one said. No response inside. We can't break in unless we have cause. Cause. Jean full-on yelled. She told me she was in danger. She told me someone was inside the house. The officer glanced at his partner, uncomfortable. Ma'am, sometimes people imagine things when they're upset. Jean stared at him in disbelief. She wasn't imagining anything. Go home, the officer said gently. Get some rest. We'll file a report. Rest? Rest? Her best friend had said goodbye on the phone and disappeared into silence, and they wanted her to rest? She didn't leave. She sat in her car outside Marilyn's gate for hours, watching the windows, praying for a shadow to move, a light to flicker, anything. Nothing happened. Not then. But the next morning, Hollywood woke up to a news report that would explode across the world. And Jean's heart shattered. In the days that followed, reporters hunted Jean like scavengers. They wanted details, emotions, quotes dripping with grief. They wanted footage of her crying, wanted to catch her collapsing outside Marilyn's house, wanted to turn her pain into headlines. She refused all of them, until the night she decided to speak. Not to defend herself, not to feed the tabloids, but to honor the woman whose final plea the world had ignored. Jean sat in front of the camera, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Everyone keeps saying Marilyn was fragile, she began. that she was unstable, that she was spiraling. She shook her head, tears burning behind her eyes. She wasn't any of those things. She was scared, and she had reason to be. The interviewer leaned forward. What do you mean? Jean swallowed hard. She wasn't imagining what she told me. Something happened that night. Something she didn't get the chance to explain. Are you implying foul play? Jean hesitated, the longest hesitation of her life. She hadn't wanted to say it, but the truth had been clawing at her since the moment the phone went silent. I'm implying, she said slowly, that Marilyn didn't sound like someone planning to leave us. She sounded like someone fighting to stay and losing. The room went still. Even the cameras seemed to stop humming. She wasn't giving up, Jean continued. She was reaching out, asking for help. She told me she felt watched. She told me she was afraid. She told me she said something she shouldn't have said. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, and the world ignored it. The interviewer shifted nervously. Do you regret not going inside the house that night? Jean broke. A sob slipped out, raw, uncontrollable, decades of guilt condensed into a sound that had haunted her since the moment she hung up the phone. I regret believing I had more time, she whispered. Everyone in the studio felt the weight of those words. Everyone watching at home felt it too. But the part that haunts me most, Jean said, voice trembling, is what she said right before the line went dead. I hear it every night before I fall asleep. She closed her eyes. Asterisk, Jean, please don't forget me. Asterisk. It was the last thing Marilyn ever said to her. Not the fear, not the confusion, not the trembling paranoia. It was that plea, soft, vulnerable, devastating. Asterisk, please don't forget me. Asterisk. Hollywood didn't forget Marilyn. But Jean never forgot that call. And she never forgave the world for dismissing it, for brushing off a woman's fear as hysteria, for assuming beauty couldn't feel danger, for ignoring the warning signs glowing like neon in the final hours of a life too bright to dim gently. Years later, Jean said something that pierced deeper than any conspiracy, any scandal, any documentary twist. If someone had taken her seriously, anyone, she'd still be here. Those words still hang over Hollywood like a ghost. Because everyone loved Marilyn Monroe. But no one heard her in time. After the cameras stopped rolling, Jean sat alone in the studio dressing room, staring at her reflection under the harsh vanity lights. Her mascara had smudged, her lipstick had faded, but it wasn't the makeup that bothered her. It was the truth she had finally said aloud. Truth she had carried like a stone in her chest for decades. Truth no one wanted to hear in the early days after Marilyn's death. Truth that still made powerful people shift uncomfortably in their chairs. She let out a trembling breath. I'm sorry, baby, she whispered to the empty room. I'm so sorry I wasn't faster. For the rest of her life, that night replayed behind her eyelids every time she closed them. The silence on the phone, the faint door sound, the way Marilyn's voice drifted in and out like someone gently pulling her away. Nothing about that call felt voluntary. Nothing about it felt like someone surrendering. It felt like someone slipping, someone being taken from herself. But the world refused to hear that. The studio had rushed to control the narrative. Producers made statements. Publicists crafted airtight explanations. Doctors gave sanitized reports. Tabloids whipped up sensational stories. Everyone had a version of Marilyn's final hours, except the woman who was with her during the most important ones. On the phone, holding her steady, trying to pull her back from a darkness she couldn't name. No one asked what Jean heard. No one cared to know, until it was too late. Years later, Jean attended a private gathering in Hollywood, a memorial for Marilyn held by the last few people who genuinely loved her. There were no reporters, no fans, no opportunists. Just quiet souls who remembered the woman beneath the myth. The room was dim, lit by candles and soft music Marilyn used to play on lonely nights. Her photographs were scattered across tables, not studio headshots, but candid pictures of her laughing, reading, cooking, being human. A director approached Jean with a drink in hand. You knew her better than most, he said gently. I tried, Jean whispered. What do you think she needed, really? Jean's answer came without hesitation. Someone to believe her. He nodded slowly, painfully. A lot of us failed her, didn't we? Every one of us, Jean replied. They stood in silence for a long time. Then Jean said something she had never admitted publicly. She wasn't paranoid. She was perceptive. Marilyn felt things before anyone else did. She always knew when something was wrong. She just didn't always have the words for it. The director swallowed hard. And the night she called you. Jean looked down, tears gathering. She wasn't confused. She was frightened, really frightened. And Marilyn wasn't scared of much. She paused. So when she was, you listened. He touched her arm. You did what you could. But Jean shook her head. Not enough. Not in time. In her later years, Jean carried a small notebook, worn leather, pages yellowed, filled with memories of Marilyn. Conversations. Secrets. Fears Marilyn confided before stepping into the spotlight. And on the very last page, Jean had written her own confession. Asterisk, the truth of that night is not what they tell. She was calling for help, and we let her die alone. Asterisk, that sentence became her burden, her grief, her price for loving Marilyn deeply and losing her suddenly. Whenever she attended events honoring Marilyn, Jean would stand quietly at the back, watching the crowds adore the version of Marilyn the world created, not the one who whispered through a trembling phone line. Asterisk, they're watching me. Asterisk. Asterisk, I don't feel safe. Asterisk. Asterisk, please don't forget me. Asterisk. Most people remembered the icon. Jean remembered the woman. The one who ate peanut butter from the jar at midnight. The one who called crying over a bad dream. The one who curled up on Jean's couch and said she wished the world would stop expecting her to shine all the time. Jean once told a close friend, "People ask why Marilyn's death still haunts me. It's because I didn't lose Marilyn Monroe. I lost Norma, and no one else even noticed she was missing." Near the end of Jean's own life, she agreed to one final interview. The interview where she said the words that finally broke through Hollywood's denial. They say she left us that night. I say she was taken from us, piece by piece, long before. The interviewer asked, "What do you think Marilyn wanted most in the end?" Jean didn't hesitate. "Peace." "And did she find it?" the interviewer whispered. Jean looked away, tears gathering again all these years later. "I don't know," she said, "but I hope so. God, I hope so." She paused, her voice cracking, because she never got it while she was alive. What Marilyn said to her best friend that night still haunts Hollywood for one reason. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a warning, a cry, a final, desperate attempt to be heard by someone, anyone, before the darkness swallowed her completely. And Jean will forever be the woman holding the phone, listening to a voice fading into silence, wishing she had understood sooner, wishing she had said the words she now whispers to the night. Asterisk, I hear you, baby. I hear you now. Asterisk.